Hundreds of years ago, monsters appeared on the earth, and countless cities fell due to furious attacks. The survivors united in several fortresses. Fortress 54 had a warning for people not to leave the fortress and to beware of 9 mystical abysses that had formed nearby. If people fell into them, they could end up in the underground lair of beasts. The girl was surrounded by a crowd of guys. One of them said that a great blessing had descended upon her because he really liked her and wanted to spend some time with her. He noted what a worthless thing, how glad she must be to have the honor of being in the same academy with such guys thanks to the mercy of Brother Kai. Brother Kai pointed out that the girl had only 2 options. She had to either let him have fun with her or jump into the abyss behind her. The girl screamed and called them psychopaths who bullied their classmates. She replied that she would never indulge people like them and would never allow them to touch her. In that case, she would have been at the bottom of the abyss. She remembered that he wanted Ling Ling to marry him because he had thrown her brother into prison and she had no choice. Brother Kai approached the girl and asked her to forget about Ling Ling and be a good girl by letting her have a good time, and for that he would spare her. The girl was only half a step away from the edge of the abyss. She had nowhere to retreat. The stones that fell into the abyss flying out from under her feet did not even make a sound when falling. The depth was so great, there was impenetrable darkness there. It was hard to even guess what might await a person who fell into this abyss. And suddenly some kind of roar was heard from there. The guys looked at each other and tensed up when they heard this sound. They wondered what it could be. They can't imagine what awaits them in the near future. Something burst out of the darkness. A huge, ugly paw grabbed the edge of the abyss, trying to get to the surface of the earth. It was a B-class bone beast. A huge monster with an ugly smile and a grin jumped out in front of the boys and the girl. Brother Kai immediately backed away, forgetting about the desired girl. His friends shouted that it was worth running because with such a beast as this, even the awakened ones were not so easy to deal with. The guys immediately ran away without waiting for Kai, who was dumbfounded with fear. He screamed, begging the creature not to eat him, and hid behind the girl's back so that if anything happened they wouldn't grab him first. He offered the monster to eat her and pushed the girl closer to him, noting how soft her skin was and suggesting that it would definitely taste better. But the monster ignored such a gift and only crawled closer to Kai, who was already shaking with fear. The monster was clearly interested in him. He struck Kai with a huge paw. The monster's grin and smile were the last things the young man saw before his death. Seeing this, Kai's friends tried to speed up. They ran with all their might, and someone even called on the phone warning about the monster and asking for help. But they ran too slowly from such a monster that could only reach them with one jump. A huge shadow hung over them. One of their comrades was crushed. The monster jumped right on him. There was nothing to help him, although his friends were so cowardly that they would not even think of such heroism. But running away couldn't help anyone in that situation. The monster hunted everyone in turn, and it would have cost him nothing to deal with such disgusting people once and for all. Ling Ling was shocked. She sat down on the ground and was confused, not knowing whether she should run and try to thank herself for her life or wait it out, hoping that the monster had not come for her. Having dealt with the guys, the monster returned to her. The blood of those who had wanted to abuse her a couple of minutes ago was flowing on his hands. The girl thought that she had simply been left for dessert, but she did not even think of running away. Tears were streaming from her eyes. She considered that she would not be able to escape, and overall dying at the hands of a monster was better than at the hands of her classmates, and closed her eyes, preparing for death. But to her surprise, the monster again did not ignore her and walked past without touching her with a finger. He pushed off the ground and jumped back into the abyss, leaving her whole and invisible. Thanks to several abysses and the connection between them, the monster appeared in another part of the city. Nearby stood tall office buildings where the investigation into what had happened was taking place. The man slammed his hand on the table. He was screaming loudly, being mad as hell and trying to figure out who could have allowed his son to die right in his school. He didn't understand what the security was doing at that time and why this could be allowed to happen. A man and a woman fell to their knees in front of him. They tried to explain that their underground monitors had not detected the monsters rising from the pore, so no one had reacted in time. The girl suggested that the bone monster could have somehow gotten in from the outside. The director could no longer contain his emotions and noted that the monster could not have crawled along the walls of the abyss and attacked his son because he had less intelligence than a bird. The director stated that they were simply trying to shirk responsibility, and in any case whoever was guilty of his son's death would definitely pay, and ordered to track down the beast and not let it leave the fortress. The bone beast, having emerged from another abyss, quickly galloped along the roofs of the building, overcoming even very large distances between buildings. He was heading towards one of the rocks with faces of otherworldly spirits carved into it who were supposed to guard the nearby city. The bone beast was already awaited by its owner standing on one of the heads in the rock. He stood together with two other bone monsters. The beast landed right at his feet and informed the master that it had returned. His master's name was Lin Yuan. He noted that the number 1 beast was covered in blood and was being pursued, and ordered him to return to the monster space. After which he also ordered bone monster number 2 to return back to its space. Lin Yuan smiled and looked at his cards and explained out loud to Wang Kai that he had thrown him into prison and now he himself had gone to the next world, and he probably never thought that the monster that killed him would be a pet. In a world overrun by monsters in which people with abilities fought for survival, he received a trump card in the form of a card with a systemic capture of monsters. The monster from which everyone ran was a target for him. Lin Yuan turned to the number 3 bone monster and asked to be taken back to prison. He climbed onto the monster's neck, and it also, jumping from roof to roof of the city's high-rise buildings, rushed back to the prison where its owner was staying. The B-class bone beast was the strongest beast he had ever caught. He had 3 of these monsters in total. They could kill not only the awakened but also the newcomers. However, in that doomed world, this was still not enough. Soon the bone monster took Lin Yuan straight to the prison yard where he was serving his sentence. Then his main goal was to get out of that prison, but only in a legal way, and he entrusted the rest of the work to his subordinate monsters. One of these was a certain demoness with 3 pairs of eyes, horns, wings, and blue-violet skin, who was capable of completing any task. It was quite quiet in the royal palace. This was surprising because usually there was a lot of noise there. Her friend tried to persuade Ling Ling not to agree and come up with another way. The girl insisted that she had no choice because her brother was thrown into prison in the dark waters and would not be released until she accepted Wang Kai's marriage proposal. Ren Yu didn't believe that there was no other way to free brother Ling Ling. Ling Ling explained that the Wang clan ruled this fortress. His father was the headmaster of the academy and his brother was a 9th level awakened. Ling Ling was sure that no prey would escape his grasp and she would have to accept her fate. When the girl reached one of the buildings, Lin was struck as if by an electric current. She was completely stunned. Rin Yu also saw this and jumped up in surprise and asked her friend what was happening. In the middle of the hall, they saw a coffin surrounded by people in black, and above it a huge photograph of Wang Kai. The girls couldn't believe that Wang Kai had actually died and that it was his funeral. Rin Yu couldn't understand how this happened, but on the other hand, she was very glad that the demon who ruled the fortress was finally dead. Lin shed tears, and wiping away her tears noted that he paid for his crimes with his life, and she was very lucky. She said that she should have told her brother about it sooner. A man came out of the hall. It was Wang Kai's father, and he was pleasantly surprised that the girl was mourning his son. He stressed that his son had chosen a worthy bride, and despite his death their contract should remain in force. Ling stopped crying and asked if the man would release her brother from prison. She hoped so with all her heart. Mr. Wang rolled his eyes slightly and said that he would definitely do it. He only needed one word for it to happen, but the girl had to fulfill her promise. Ren Yu stepped back slightly and emphasized that his son was dead, and it was impossible to fulfill his promises. The man noted that he knew about his son's death, but he would be so lonely there, so Ling must marry him at a ghost wedding. Ren Yu tried to be indignant about this because a living person should not marry a dead person. But Ling asked the man if he would definitely let her brother go after this wedding. The gentleman replied that if the girl obediently followed his son, then he would not let her brother go, explaining that someone had to wait for his son on the other side. Well, he warned that if the girl refused, then her brother and father would die along with his son. The gentleman offered the girl a choice. I know that she will definitely follow his wishes for the sake of her family. Ren Yu screamed that it was nonsense and asked her friend not to agree to such conditions. But the girl remained silent, looking down at the floor, thinking about this proposal. A few tears fell from her eyes. Ling agreed to marry Mr. Wang's son in a ghost wedding. Later, in the secret room of the Wang clan, father and son discussed very important matters away from prying ears. Wang Yang, the eldest son and a 9th level awakened, declared to his father that he would kill any enemy who touched his younger brother, and asked if Ling had accepted the proposal of a ghost wedding and if they would be nice to her family. Mr. Wang said that he promised to spare her family, noted that they must get rid of all suspects and therefore her brother should die first and after the wedding her father. Wang Yan didn't need to be told what to do for long, and he immediately went to complete this task and promised his father that the girl's brother would die in prison today. It was very noisy in the prison of dark waters. You could hear the knocking of cell doors, locks, and many voices. In the prison of dark waters, a sudden judgment night began. There were no rules. Either one was killed or the other killed. The prisoner, who enjoyed great authority among the others, ordered the guy to be beaten to death like an animal and noted that this was the only goal. The prisoners, with wide smiles on their faces, happily agreed. They were ready to crush this guy like an ant and immediately went to him. Lin Yuan's cellmate heard a noise in the corridor and warned that there was talk that apparently all the thugs in the prison had been hired to kill him. Afterwards, the man discovered that all the bars were unlocked and suggested that Lin Yuan run away. The young man, without looking up from his book, asked with surprising calmness why it was necessary to escape. The cellmate was amazed by the answer and explained that the guy was young and the thugs would leave no one alive. Lin Yuan responded to this without looking up from his book that if they were thugs they would be able to enter the room and take his life. He was not worried at all, although the thugs were already walking through his life thinking that no one would stop them. Lin Yuan's cellmate was very excited. Sweat appeared on his face and his body gave way from fear. He urged the boy to move and run while there was still time. Suddenly the noise from the corridor stopped, which frightened the man even more. Lin Yuan still slammed the book shut and said, "Let's go and see what's going on." When they walked out of the cell, Lin Yuan's cellmate was in a state of great shock and froze in place, trying to make sure his eyes weren't lying to him. All the thugs froze in their places in various poses. Felt like someone had frozen them. The man tried to understand what was going on and asked Lin Yuan. A demoness appeared above the leader of the thugs, who had already figured out her victim and was ready to kill each of the prisoners who dared to attack her master. It didn't take her long to deal with them all, tearing them into tiny pieces. The man screamed in fear that it was the hell of the Azuras and asked his cellmate who he really was. Lin Yuan replied that if no one would offend him, then he would not touch anyone, but otherwise he would destroy everyone. The warden's office was behind a huge armored door and was securely locked. The man stood in the middle of the office and asked the warden if he would bring him Lin Yuan's head. Prison warden Tiaki smirked and promised that the weak and helpless Lin Yuan would be tortured to death by the prison bosses. The royal palace manager smiled and noted that once this was all over he would take his head as a gift for the ghost wedding. The deputy warden, a girl named Bai Ling, asked if something was coming after hearing a loud noise outside the door. The manager of the royal palace was afraid that these might be mad prisoners who had escaped from prison. The warden put his feet up on the table and, lighting a cigar, noted that even a tank couldn't break down the door to the office and asked Manager Van to relax. But the warden was very wrong when he said this, because the next moment the door was broken down with just one fist. But that fist belonged to a monster. The first blow caused the metal of the door to bend into the shape of a hand. The warden, his deputy, and the manager of the royal palace jumped up in their seats in fright. The next blow blew the door off its hinges. Instead of a door, there was just a hole. It was the work of a monster that possessed a power incomparable to the armor-piercing power of that door. When the dust settled, Lin Yuan entered the office with his pet bone monster and greeted everyone in a friendly manner. The royal palace manager screamed when he saw the bone monster and threatened Lin Yuan to report to the master that the guy was controlling the monster. But that was the last thing the man said, because the monster's fist instantly pinned him to the wall, leaving him as just a wet spot. Deputy Warden Bai Ling thought about the fact that there was not a single record in history about the B-ranked bone beast that was controlled by a human. Natara rocked his chair and backed into the corner and ran, saying that they had invaded the prison of dark waters. If the young man killed him, he would not escape punishment for it. He shouted that his prison had the strongest guards who could tear everyone into small pieces. Lin Yuan nodded to the side with complete calmness and asked the warden if these were the people he was talking about. Indeed, outside the office stood the entire prison guard, already controlled by Lin Yuan himself. The fighters were ready to attack the warden, their boss, at any second, and were only waiting for the command. The warden backed further towards the wall and tried to scold his men for disobeying, although everyone had their weapons pointed at him, and in his case it was no use shouting. The warden Tiag Chi tried to reason with his guards and reminded them that he had personally trained them all. Fear overcame him, and he began to shake violently from helplessness. Above the entire army there was one of the monsters who could subjugate the village to the will of others. Lin Yuan pointed out that all of the guards of the Tianqi warden had now become his spider's pets. The warden finally understood the situation he was in and began to bow at Lin Yuan's feet and beg for mercy. He began to admit that he was wrong and explained that the Wang family forced him to act this way. Lin Yuan asked for a second to think and demanded that he hand over his supervisor's credentials. The warden immediately took out the ID ready to give it and do anything that would save his life, but noted that this thing would be useless for the young man. Lin Yuan assured that it was no longer his concern. He took the ID card and said goodbye to the warden, clicking his fingers, giving the order to the guard. The warden shouted, noting that the boy had not kept his promise, but it was too late. He was immediately hit by a burst of gunfire from his own men. Looking at the guard's corpse, Lin Yuan noted that he had asked for the ID card, which he had his own plans for, but he had not promised to spare his life. Bai Ling Wu had been standing motionless and had not made a sound the entire time. Lin Yuan smiled and handed her the ID card and greeted the girl with a new status. The girl accepted the ID card and breathed a sigh of relief that she would not die. Lin Yuan reminded her that according to the laws of Fortress 54, in an emergency a deputy warden could become a warden even if he was a common staff member. He handed her a spider egg and noted that for this the girl must absorb the egg in order to become completely under his control. Bai Ling took the egg and looked at it for a moment, thinking. She was scared, but she was even more scared of losing her life. She agreed and ate the spider egg as she was told. Lin Yuan grinned and explained to the girl that if she obeyed he would preserve her will. Bai Ling knelt down on one knee and bowed her head, saying that she agreed, and noted that the prison had now become the master's territory, which he had apparently been planning to seize for a long time. Bai Ling looked up at Lin Yuan and asked what her first task would be. Lin Yuan replied that if the girl wanted to prove that she could be useful, he would give her such a chance, and told her that 3 days ago the metal beast that had entered the fortress was not completely killed. The military was looking for a way to contain him, and the girl had to apply on behalf of the Dark Waters prison and make sure she was accepted. Bai Ling warned that the Dark Water prison was unable to restrain an S-rank metal beast, but noted that she understood the master's intentions and promised to submit an application immediately and do everything to take possession of their first S-rank monster. Lin Yuan headed to the exit of the office and asked the girl to take him out of the prison and report the arrival of the monster. The girl made it clear that she would do everything. Bai Ling then said that once he left the Dark Water prison alive, the Wang family, namely the 9th level awakened one, would definitely come for him, and it would be better for him to hide in the prison. Lin Yuan turned around and smiled and said that it was useless to hide because he preferred to be first. Lin Yuan went to the Thunder Skill Training Hall. The place was not very lively. Entering inside, Lin Yuan exhaled heavily as he immediately caught numerous glances on him. People started whispering that this guy came to the dojo immediately after his release and apparently didn't know that his sister was supposed to get married at a ghost wedding and therefore decided to just hide like a coward. Something suggested that he might have come to ask for help from the manager, although he would hardly have started arguing with an influential person for the sake of some simpleton. What did you think that he was looking for the elder Ning who had always treated him well? In general, all the conversations boiled down to the fact that it was a pity for this guy because no one could dare to help him cope with the overwhelming power of the Wang family. The man perked up a little when he saw Lin Yuan. Wei Xing adjusted his glasses on his nose and said that he had managed to collect all the information about the movement and guest list at the ghost wedding, but the connection with the 3 bugs monitoring the network had been lost. Lin Yuan took out something from his inside pocket and threw it into the air, noting that he could give new ones. There were a lot of bugs flying into the hall, and Wei Xing was very surprised by such a huge number of bugs. Lin Yuan explained that there were a lot of such bugs in the Dark Water prison, and he took several for himself. Wei Xing caught one on his finger and said that 3 would be enough to monitor the prison and the Wang family network, and with that number they could control half of the fortress. Lin Yuan took out another thing from his inside pocket and noted that he had received a synchronized date. Afterwards, he asked to continue to monitor the Wang family and everyone involved in the ghost wedding and stay in touch. Wei Xing asked him to be careful, noting that Wang Yang, as the eldest son of the Wang family, and his friends had arrived for the ghost wedding. They were all 9th level awakened, the strongest in their generation. He continued to say that because Lin Yuan's bone monster had not yet been found, the wedding venue was protected by a barrier. There, the guy noted that as the only member of the alliance against the Wang family, they would have to survive at any cost. To this, Lin Yuan asked not to worry, and heading for the exit noted that he had a plan. 3 months ago, Wei Xing was almost caught spying on Wang Kai, but Ling Yuan saved him. From that day on, he vowed to follow him and fight against the Wang family. Lin Yuan said that he saved him back then because they had the same goal for both of them, and he didn't expect that the pervert who secretly took pictures of the campus girls wanted to take revenge because one of them was pushed into the abyss. Mr. Wang was driving an armored SUV through the desert at high speed at the time. He asked the advisor if he really wanted to attend the ghost wedding. The advisor was driving and asked how a living person could marry a dead person. The gentleman said that this insignificant girl was marrying a deceased member of a noble family, and for someone like her it was a great honor, and in general such a simpleton had no right to decide about her marriage. The advisor noted that when you heard that the final stage of the ghost wedding was the murder of the bride. The gentleman smiled and twirled his dagger in his hand and replied that he would personally cut her throat so that she would go to the underworld and serve the second son of the Wang family forever. The advisor reminded that the bone monster that killed the second son was not caught and asked if it was dangerous, to which the gentleman simply asked him to relax. He noted that the armored vehicle could withstand attacks from tank monsters. Even if a bone monster suddenly appeared, it would not be able to break through the armor. Very suddenly for both passengers, their car crashed into something. Even more surprising for them was that it was the bone monster that stood in their way. The monster immediately began to try to break through the armor of the car and get to the advisor and the master. The monster roared and showed a long row of its sharp, huge teeth. The advisor shouted that the bone monster was indeed right in front of them and began to try to steer and escape from this monster. The gentleman asked the advisor to calm down, said that with a black coating, even at full strength, one beast could only break through 50%. I cannot go and knock it down. Well, after a few seconds it turned out that there were 3 bone monsters. Significantly reduced their chances of survival. Now the gentleman himself got scared. He shouted that the informant had reported to him that there was only one monster. Not far away, Lin Yuan was watching all of this. He was not visible to those in the car, but he was controlling the entire attack. When the monsters had scared the passengers enough, Lin Yuan ordered them to attack in earnest. With each blow, the machine's defense decreased. The monsters' blows were so powerful that even the strongest armor could not last long. The cars were damaged very quickly. The metal bent and the glass cracked. Soon there was nothing left of the machine's armor ability. A few more moments before the monsters reached the master and his advisor. With the extreme impact, the car flipped over several times and began to fall apart into pieces right in the middle of the road. Mr. Wang was not killed immediately. One of the monsters grabbed him and waited for his master. Mr. Wang could barely open his eyes and was only able to see who was approaching him through a small crack. But he did not recognize the young man at first and asked him for help, promising a generous reward for it. Lin Yuan had already picked up the blade and unsheathed it, asking if it was intended for the ghost wedding. Now Mr. Wang understood what was happening and began to beg even more strongly to spare him. But Lin Yuan was too angry to leave alive such a terrible person who had caused his family so much pain. The guy was not one to give his enemy the last word and very quickly dealt with Mr. Van. He took the life of this man and called upon the shadow, noting that it was now her turn. The shadow immediately appeared and began to crawl towards the gentleman's lifeless body. The shadow took complete control of the master's body despite the fact that he had already been dead for a long time. Now this day could control the body as it would think about eating or its owner Lin Yuan. The shadow disguise was limited to 2 hours, but it should be enough. Lin Yuan really wanted to show up for the posthumous marriage. The noble aristocrats were already gathering to visit the cemetery. Many were discussing how irresistible the bride would be. One of the guests, rising, noted that beauty did not matter because she would be buried anyway. Another said that there were rumors that the killer of the second son of the Van family was still uncaught, to which he was told about the invitation of awakened people with strong skills of the 9th level, which was not worth worrying about. Right at the gates to the cemetery, something fell very sharply from the sky, producing a huge explosion like a meteorite. This is the 9th squad of the Abyss arriving. What fell to the ground was the head of a ram from the grave, which was a D-level monster. Lei Dian noted that it was a wedding gift. One of the guests shouted out, recognizing this man, and noted that he could soon become an awakened one who was promised to be given the civil district where the bride's father lived after the wedding. They were glad to see him and believed that thanks to his presence the ceremony would go off without a hitch. Lei Dian turned to Mag-In and warned that if even one monster appeared in the cemetery, it would become a corpse. The fighter promised that monsters below level S were powerless against his spell. Bloodhound Yu stated that the entire cemetery was under his surveillance and he would be aware if the monsters approached the altar, and immediately noted that one was immediately spotted. He also jumped up and promised that he would return in a moment and ran towards the monster he saw. Meijing rolled his eyes slightly and noted that blockhead Yu was good at mental tracking and was able to quickly find monsters. Well, the mysterious enemy wasn't that stupid. He spotted the same bug that was sent to observe the situation by Lin Yuan and Wei Xing. The bug burned out under the influence of electricity. The Bloodhound Yu picked up this beetle, and with a wide smile noted that he had caught a very large fish. Now it was worth scanning the entire area as thoroughly as possible. He used mental surveillance. Immediately before his eyes appeared the image of Wei Xing, who was the one who launched these very bugs. For the Bloodhound Yu, this was a weak energy aura, and he decided to first look at the entire memory of the bug and then find out who its owner was. But something happened that shocked the Bloodhound Yu very much and even scared him. The whole world before his eyes seemed to darken. He was infected and he realized it with horror. It was spiritual pollution. The manipulator was very weak and he could not understand how he got caught against him. A few seconds later, the Bloodhound's brain died and he fell from the air onto the concrete surface of the ground. Wei Xing was very happy to discover this and noted that the elder was right and the traps set against things really worked. He decided that it was worth getting rid of him and he would no longer need the disguise. By that time, a limousine had arrived at the cemetery and apparently a very respected man had stepped out. The eldest son of the Wang family immediately hurried to meet him. The man was outraged that the Wang family treated the guests badly, and the head of the family also did not come out to greet them, sending a little brat in his place. The young man bowed low and apologized, explaining that his father had been at a wedding banquet and hoped that the head would understand the situation. The man said that he wanted to see his bride and started to climb the steps to the hall. Many of the guests noted that the head of the clan had not even arrived when he was already stinking and whispering about what kind of quarrel they had with the Van family. The 9th squad of the Abyss went to the banquet hall of the cemetery. They noticed that there was no message from the Bloodhound. Some were worried that something might have happened. Lei Dian asked one of his men to look for the Bloodhound as quickly as possible. When the boy came out of the gold, he came across the head of the clan, who immediately asked him to come closer. A boy with a cold look. He was an ice mage named Han, and was very surprised that the clan leader himself called him. The gentleman confirmed that it was worth approaching faster and noted that he had one matter to attend to. The clan leader was outraged. He asked who would take responsibility for his safety in that case and noted that although they were the strongest 9th squad, no one was allowed to leave without his permission. The ice mage changed and said that they couldn't ignore the fact that their comrade's life was being threatened, and he couldn't interfere in the affairs of the 9th squad, despite his even position. This greatly infuriated the chief, and he said that in that case it would be very difficult for him to call them awakened, since he had no business getting involved in such matters. He suspended their Abyss Pass for 3 months, ordered the Bastion Fund to stop providing them with research funds, and ordered the government to issue them a grant to move to another free territory. People behind their backs immediately began to whisper that the congressman using his power left the powerful awakened without a livelihood and did so only for personal gain. So in general, everyone considered him crazy despite his very high position in society and enormous power. Lei Dian laughed at this conversation and asked the congressman not to get excited and assured that his squad understood everything perfectly. Lei Dian promised that they would stay to ensure his safety. People again began to whisper that Lei Dian was about to receive the title of Awakened, so it was stupid of the congressman to make his life difficult, and the leader, for the sake of his family's momentary safety, chewed up the future enemy. The man adjusted his tie near the mirror and told the bride that she must follow all the rules as soon as the guests arrived and be obedient. Ling Ling replied that there would be panic until he broke his promise, otherwise she would not leave him alone even in the form of a ghost. The man grinned and replied that her brother would be released from prison as soon as they got married. He thought to himself that her brother's head should have been delivered soon. A congressman burst into the hall and asked the girl not to worry, assuring her that Mr. Van would definitely free her brother. The appearance of the congressman made the guy very nervous. He certainly did not expect to see him at that moment. The gentleman noted that in that case Mr. Van would lose his head and looked at the guy and asked if that was the case. Mr. Ivan replied that it was so, and without hiding it smiled a very unpleasant smile. Lin Lin asked the dolls in the figures if he was the same witness from Parliament who arrived at the wedding and asked if he could follow her brother after the wedding. The man smiled and promised on behalf of the witness that if the Wang family did not keep their word, then he would personally send their entire family to hell, and asked Mr. Wang if he heard him. The guy thought that Grisman was just wild, but he agreed with him out loud. Ling Ling said sadly that her brother should have been free no matter the price for that freedom. The gentleman assured that it would definitely be so. Lin Yuan, who controlled his body, knew that she would not have to pay anything and everything would be fine with her. The gentleman cleared his throat and asked the maid to take the gentleman to the VIP room so that he could prepare for the ceremony. The girl's name was Chi. She was once saved by Ling Yuan. She turned to the master and asked him to follow her. They silently left the hall and began to descend the stairs. The girl knew who was in front of her and turned to Lin Yuan and asked him to run. She noted that they understood his desire to save his sister but emphasized that he was only level 6 with which he would never survive. Lin Yuan was surprised at how she had exposed his disguise and asked where she had been released from with the level of his abilities and asked if she had possessed rare spiritual power. And Chi replied that she indeed had such power, but she was only at the 3rd level. The girl continued speaking and asked him to understand that in addition to the 5 awakened 9th squad, he would have to face other fighters. She said that Master Wang had formed a squad of 100 elite soldiers with 9th level abilities and set up an ambush at the cemetery, and that Lin Yuan's skills were not enough to escape from this meat grinder. Lin Yuan scratched his temporary beard and noted that a grand battle was about to take place. And Chi looked at him and said that she just wanted to repay his kindness. And she reminded him that he saved her by killing Wang Kai, and now the Wang family was setting up a net against him, and she couldn't allow that to happen. Lin Yuan stopped and asked what her plan was then. She asked him not to worry, as she would use force to warn of danger, and if necessary she could even provide passage for the master to escape. Lin Yuan covered his face with his hands, surprised that the girl was really willing to sacrifice so much for some monster. And Chi sharply replied that the master was not a monster, but a ray of hope that saved her from the shackles of death. She asked him not to say that. The girl was seething with anger and did not understand why he was taking so many risks, and he did not know how to calm her down. And Chi again begged him to leave while he had the chance and promised to cover for him. Only with you, he would not give his life in vain. The gentleman looked down and noted that it was apparently too late to talk about anything. The wedding ceremony was about to begin. The host asked all the guests to warmly welcome the arriving member of parliament. The gentleman came down the stairs with the maid and asked whether the bride should be introduced first. One of the fighters of the 9th squad turned to the guests and asked for a moment of attention, notifying that the squad of the Abyss had discovered an otherworldly being at the ceremony and they had to eliminate the problems. People got excited. I realized what was going on. Well, they quickly realized that apparently someone had slipped through the security check. Lin Yuan also guessed what might have happened at this moment and looked at Chi. The 9th squad fighter also pointed at her, noting that this girl had entered the ceremony under a false identity. And Chi conveyed her thoughts to Lin Yuan that she would deliver her final mental blow since she was not going to live anyway, and asked him to run away on the 3rd count since this was the only chance. The girl began to count, watching as one of the fighters of the 9th detachment was already preparing to take her life. She cast the death seal with all her might. Instead of running away, Lin Yuan jumped up to the fighter of the 9th squad, covering the girl from the attack. Without even thinking about how to proceed further, he cut the fighter into pieces right in front of all the invited guests. And Chi didn't understand why he didn't run away. His action only meant that he would fight to the last. At this point, Lei Dian realized that the gentleman was not a congressman and had taken on someone else's identity. Everyone was interested in the motive of this man who now controlled the congressman's body. Lin Yuan replied that his goal was to kill everyone in this hall and threw the body of one of the people from the 9th squad away. Lei Dian asked him not to disgrace himself, noting that he only had a 6th level of abilities and the girl had basically gone crazy and no one would be able to escape. And it was worth preparing to confess to all the crimes. Lin Yuan was indignant that anyone would even think of talking about a disaster and emphasized that this was only the beginning. It was time for him to play the real game, and he pulled out a trump card from his deck. Lei Dian noted that the manipulation was at the highest level, but since the attacks were thoughtless, he called it clowning. One of the fighters noted that it would be very funny to go to his death from a moron like this fake congressman. As soon as he said that Canera was changing him, he laughed to death and immediately lost one of the fingers on his hands. Another of the fighters warned that the consignment cards were flying right from behind and everyone had to be very careful. One of the fighters was quickly killed thanks to one of these cards. Lin Yuan took his life without even putting in much effort and slowly walked further down the hall. The other soldiers from the 9th squad noted that he used a supersonic card, which was a huge surprise to everyone. And Qi understood why Ling Yuan's strength had reached the power of the 9th level for a split second. Lin Yuan knew that monsters couldn't be summoned, but their cards could be equipped, and he just happened to have rare cards. It was for this reason that his ability instantly reached the peak of the 9th level while being at the 6th level. Lei Dian addressed him saying that the body he took control of was weak as can be, and even if he decided to cheat and reach the 9th level, he would be easily wiped into dust, and offered to feel the true wrath of Thor before a painful death. And she apologized, pointing out that she didn't have any extra energy and couldn't help Lin Yuan escape. But he didn't even intend to do that. Suddenly the entire hall rose above the ground. Imitation lightning began to fly in the air. Everything was electrified to the limit. Lei Dian used a thunder field and harmed everyone who could interfere. Lin Yuan smirked and wondered if this was the legendary Thunder Fist that everyone was talking about. Lei Dian confirmed this by calling him humble and weak. He believed that only with this skill would this incident end. He rushed towards Lin Yuan, calling for him to suffer divine punishment. But suddenly the path was blocked by a huge dark figure which apparently did not feel the effect of the thunderstorm field. Lei Dian did not stop thinking that this was another illusion. He was sure that nothing could withstand the Thunder Fist. But he was very wrong. When his fist hit the bone beast, he did not react to this blow at all. There wasn't a single scratch left on this monster. Lei Dian couldn't figure out where an awakened-level monster came from in the hall. Lin Yuan called the leader of the 9th squad an idiot and said that he killed the monk and got it by force. Lei Dian fell into the trap, heard what Lin Yuan did, demanded to be released, and began to break free from the clutches of the monster. Lin Yuan smiled and asked his pet to swat the fly he was holding in his hands. The bone monster did this with great pleasure. The strength of the leader of the 9th squad was too little to be able to protect anyone. His blood splashed and flew all over the hall, staining everything and everyone around him. Lin Yuan stood motionless in the very center, looking very relaxed and calm. This blood also fell on another member of the Van family. Here his mouth opened in shock and he could not immediately react. He just pointed his finger at him, pointing out that his older brother had been killed and he couldn't do anything else. Lin Yuan picked up Qi in his arms and walked away from this hall, leaving everything as it was, ignoring the youngest son of the Wang family. Finally, Lin Yuan turned around and said that he had come to conduct the wedding ceremony and that it was time to start the ceremony and reunite the Wang family. The head of the family appeared on the balcony and shouted that he had been waiting for Lin Yuan for a very long time. From the side, he looked disgusting, like a monster. His burning eyes, full of malice, could be seen from afar. Lin Yuan smiled and asked if Mr. Wang really wanted to avenge her son that much. The gentleman replied that his son died in the arms of the enemy, and he cannot be called a father unless he takes revenge. I noted that justice was on the side of the Wang family. Lin Yuan asked him if he thought about how many lives his son had destroyed, or if he thought that getting married in a cemetery and killing were social morals. The gentleman shouted that in his domain the lives of peaceful people were reduced to a miserable existence, and no one cared about some midges, and he was doing a favor to the Lin family burying their daughter with his son. The head of the family shouted that the enemy must not escape and ordered Jan to destroy everyone. Here he turned to the elite of Guanghui Academy and ordered him to exterminate everyone and leave no one alive. He could not allow Ling Yuan to escape his punishment. The entire squad rushed towards Lin Yuan. It was decided to surround the vestibule so that he could not escape by air. The cemetery building was surrounded by soldiers on all sides. These people were too self-confident and believed that they were invincible. Lin Yuan, his usual calm, looked at what was happening around him and replied that he would not let anyone go alive either, and wished that the wedding ceremony would appear in all its glory. He summoned the beasts of the D-level realm of the dead. These monsters were evolved and were too dangerous for anyone. Wang Yang couldn't believe his eyes when he saw this. He quickly realized that their opponent wasn't that simple. The beasts used the call of the departed spirit. Perhaps Lin Yuan really wasn't that strong, well, as he said, the main thing was what kind of monsters he had under his command. The cemetery was filled with a majestic energy force that struck down everyone along the way. Most of the fighters fell in that very second, unable to withstand such energy. They were too weak before such an opponent. The leader of the squad explained that monsters that attacked with sound waves could only be easily destroyed in the abyss. Her fighters could only block sound attacks if they were within a radius of 10 meters from her. Wang Yang advised to hold on to the awakened ones who have already reached half awakening and move forward. Captain Lin, with a barrier radius of 10 meters, warned that otherwise everyone could die. Captain Zhu, with a barrier radius of 20 meters, said that he could not protect weaklings and did not want to let anyone near him. Captain Mist, with a barrier radius of 30 meters, on the contrary, called all the outcasts to him. Captain So, with a barrier radius of a full 500 meters, turned to the boss and informed him that he would solve this problem for him. Everyone gathered together. The monsters from the other world were good at sound attacks, but their physical defense was weak. Their weak points were identified and the fighters set out to destroy them. The captains were confident that they could do it and happily went into battle. Very suddenly for everyone it started snowing. Everyone was surprised by this because there shouldn't have been any weather conditions or magic nearby that could have caused snow to fall. These were ritual paper money, as it turned out a little later. They were in a cemetery and this was not surprising. Well, a few moments later it turned out that it was real poison, and those who were hit by these snowflakes immediately died in great agony. One by one people fell to the ground and were torn to pieces. Blood splashes were everywhere. All the green grass was covered with traces of the enemy's death. Most of the squad fell within seconds, as it was impossible to hide from such snow. Captain Lin noted that it was the mother corpse vine that was spraying these poisonous papers around. Lin Yuan stood boldly beside her and was glad that the enemies were afraid of him and were at a loss. He said that marriage was to bury everything and did not dare to deviate from his plan. Captain Mo explained that the mother corpse vine was a rank E monster. As its roots penetrated the graves, it grew rapidly as it used the corpses as nutrients. It could be assumed that it had already managed to develop to level C, since not only nobles but also a huge number of influential people were buried in the cemetery. There was a huge chance that there would not be a single survivor left if the mother vine was allowed to continue to grow. Captain Mo noted that it was unfortunate for the killer to have the misfortune of meeting him and added that anyone who was not strong enough would die if they did not fight. He called the 4 captains to follow him to behead the target before the vine could grow forward, and they immediately set about accomplishing this goal. Lin Yuan calmly awaited his enemies, knowing that they would not be able to break him. Captain Mo was the first to fly and the rest followed closely behind. But the storm that arose was too difficult for the detachment to advance and made movement difficult. Captain Mo said that everything was under control and asked the others to follow him and just follow orders. Wang Yang was still in the banquet hall that was already half destroyed. He doubted that the 4 commanders could handle the corpse vine mother. Mr. Wang asked him not to worry, noting that Captain Mo was a genius in battle tactics and his family had spent a huge amount of resources to create the Fortress Guardian, a monster that had a 100% victory over the highest level monsters of the abyss and could stop at nothing. The formation that was advancing on Ling Yuan began to have huge problems. Their advancement as a whole became impossible due to the fact that their forces suddenly began to leave them. Captain Mo temporarily awakened and noted that he never loses because he can analyze and predict any outcome of a battle in 10 minutes, and stated that he must show all his determination. Wang Yang noted with horror that the captain had temporarily awakened, but they had already lost 3 commanders. It was clear that this psycho would do anything for his victory. His older brother, who raised him, burned down in his own house because Wang Mo did not agree with him calling himself a father. Wang Mo sealed Ling Yuan's space, trapping him in his own. He noted that now he could not escape in any way. His corpse vine evolved only after 3 minutes. At the same moment, the captain was thrown outside the building by a powerful energy beam and lifted high above the ground. It was amazing to him that Lin Yuan was able to break through his barrier. He had expected a different outcome and was sure that the vine would only evolve after some time. But she evolved earlier, although she should have done it only after 3 minutes. I didn't understand why this monster was still alive. Lin Yuan laughed at him and called him a moron. He said that he had a card that accelerated the evolution process by 10%. Captain Mo couldn't stand the fight. The vine killed him and threw him from a great height to the ground right in front of the other commanders. The master shouted that Lin Yuan was a monster who killed not only his own son but also his adopted son. Lin Yuan chuckled and emphasized that apparently for the master his adopted son was much more important than his own, and now the genius in whom he had invested his efforts and on whom he had placed his hopes had ultimately ended up dead. Ling Yuan pointed out that he was also expecting revenge for using his trump card at the beginning of the battle, thereby destroying the future of the Wang family. The gentleman roared with anger, not understanding how he dared to insult the Wang family, and asked why he wanted to destroy it so much. At this moment Lin Yuan's disguised time and glass. He appeared in the form of his body, having gotten rid of the congressman's shell. The gentleman was in shock because he thought that Lin Yuan was dead, as he was assured in prison. Lin Yuan smiled and explained that he had sent the message himself. He then noted that he had almost forgotten about the wedding gift and took out the head of the royal palace manager. At your home, she carefully held her head and turned it in different directions, showing that it was indeed the manager. The master was at a loss that the manager of the royal palace, the mentor, was also killed by Lin Yuan. This was the last straw, and Mr. Wang, shouting that Lin Yuan had no right to underestimate this family, rushed at him. He used a spatial strike to hit Lin Yuan, but he failed again as Lin Yuan managed to react and set up a protective barrier. After this, Lord Wang's adopted son Captain Mo became the guardian of his mother's vine. Lin Yuan noted that he was a true master of spatial strikes, so it was amazing that he now had to put an end to the foster family. Mr. Wang wanted to say something about Sister Lin Yuan, but he stopped mid-sentence. Ling Yuan ordered Captain Mind to kill Lord Wang before he could finish speaking. The captain immediately carried out his order. He used the spatial rift to strike down Lord Wang, his adoptive father. This was no longer his adopted son, the absolute monster, who only carried out the orders of the monster from the abyss. Lin Yuan replaced his sister with a shadow at the moment he killed the seal keeper. Now that it was all over, he picked her up in his arms and whispered that they were going home before the messengers of doomsday came from the fortress. A lot of people gathered in the square dressed in cloaks and holding candles. They shouted that the end of the world was coming and only faith in monsters could save humanity. They called on people to join them and save the last flame of humanity. Their leader, a girl, spoke of the events at the cemetery that shook the fortress, which was a sign that the monsters had indeed come. She said that the fortress could not protect them and the faith of the monsters was their only way out. Lin Yuan watched this speech with his usual calm from the crowd of other onlookers in the fortress who were listening to this speech with rapt attention. And she was the leader of this event and pointed out that out of all the monsters she recommended the number 1 bone monster who saved her, and she was sure that he was the messenger of God who would save humanity. She handed Lin Yuan a piece of paper with a smile. Lin Yuan, having become familiar with the contents of this piece of paper, replied that the girl was exaggerating. And she asked Ling Yuan to join them already because he was also saved in the cemetery, and without her master his 6th-level beast would be dead. He had to believe it. Lin Yuan was amazed that the girl actually believed in it. And she asked to dedicate everything to her master because this was the only way she could express her sincerity. Lin Yuan cleared his throat and began to walk away, advising him to recruit someone else without emphasizing that he didn't have time for that. The girl asked him to stop and promised that she would make the bone monster known to the entire guild, and then to the whole world he could become the god of everything and everyone. Lin Yuan didn't listen to her and walked away. He watched this procession from one of the high-rise rooftops and thought that the world was moving in a strange direction. Captain Mo, who had returned from the criminal department, appeared behind him. Lin Yuan asked if anyone had noticed that the youngest vice minister of criminal justice had become a dead man. The walking dead Wang Mo assured that he as a subordinate was extremely careful, and no one could ever suspect this. Following the instructions of the master, he with his privileges destroyed all traces that could remain during the battle in the cemetery. He reported that he had checked on Huang Long, who had inherited all the Wang family's property. Wang Mo said that Huang Long was the strongest awakened fire of the fortress, and he had a huge number of disciples, among whom was Yi Wang Yang. Lin Yuan noted that he had squandered the Wang family's inheritance to hypocritically end his grievances against them, and it was understandable why he had asked for a meeting. Lin Yuan decided that the meeting would take place. Captain Mo asked him to be careful, noting that Huang Long was a strong opponent and his minions should be avoided. Lin Yuan smirked and asked him to worry about Captain Mo. He assured him that he had a plan and he should continue to work in the criminal department but be careful that no one would reveal his secret. Wang Mo reminded that he was dead and his fate was sealed, so he would carry out any order of his master like a loyal dog. At this point Lin Yuan asked him to go and wait for further instructions. Ling Yuan knew that Wang Mo had been aiming to control the fortress, but now he had simply added to his deck of cards. Therefore Ling Yuan hurried to fulfill his ambitions for him and get acquainted with Huang Long. After that Ling Yuan went to the Fire Dragon Fortress for that very meeting. Huang Long was sitting on the throne in a huge hall. There were many guards and servants around him. He saw Lin Yuan entering the hall and asked if he was a representative of the Lin family. Lin Yuan walked to the center of the hall and stopped, answering that he was indeed a representative of the Lin family. Huang Long took out a white folded cloth and asked the young man if he knew that as the owner of the Wang family's property, he had put an end to their existence and would now put an end to him as well. He threw a pair of white long shirts right at Lin Yuan's feet, which made the guy extremely angry. Huang Long pointed out that Lin Yuan's sister should have died together with the second son of the Wang family in the cemetery, so the three of them should pay for the death of the Wang family members at their wedding, even though the culprits had not yet been revealed. Lin Yuan glanced at the things and noted that they were mourning clothes. Huang Long said that he would give 3 days, after which the whole trinity should dress up in these rags and perform ritual self-immolation. Only then would the issue be resolved. Lin Yuan looked up and looked straight into Huang Luan's eyes and asked what would happen if he was refused. Huang Long grinned angrily and declared that in this fortress no one dared to refuse an awakened one, otherwise they would have to pay a very high price. Lin Yuan showed the bracelet on his right hand. He grinned and said that he was also a very strong awakened. He registered for the awakened exam. If you touch him with even a finger, you will become an enemy of the legislature. In that case, even his own subordinates in this fortress could start hunting Wan Luna. Many were surprised because they read him as an ordinary student and did not understand why they received false information. Wan Long grinned at the guy defending himself with a test that the entire fortress conveyed great importance to. It was smart. Well, he noted that the guy should understand that once he entered his territory he was no longer a tenant. Lin Yuan laughed and called Huang Luan just a stuffy man. I advise him to use his brain. I draw attention to the fact that it was not without reason that he came alone. Huang Long rose into the air above his throne surrounded by flames and emphasized the importance of the fact that before a true awakened one, struggle and conspiracies were nothing. Lin Yuan was calm but determined to resolve the issue only the way he wanted. He asked Huang Long to listen and declared that he could not defeat him. At that moment fine snow began to swirl in the air and a cold wind blew. Huang Luan's people began to fuss, not knowing where to expect danger from, and did not really understand what was happening. The temperature was rapidly falling and all the fighters began to freeze. The storm seemed to be getting stronger. Very suddenly all the people of Wan Luan became encased in ice. They no longer posed a threat. Wan Luan, surrounded by flames, did not even think of helping them. He only noted that the guy used the glacier effect and realized that he had an ice element user. A blindfolded girl appeared on one of the glaciers and asked her brother if she needed to kill his enemy. Not called Ning Xian. She was on Lin Yuan's side and was willing to fulfill any of his wishes. Huang Long replied that it was natural for the awakened to resist fire, but she should not forget that he was the strongest of them and could incinerate anyone into oblivion even if it meant burning their soul. Lin Yuan responded that they would definitely fight someday, but now was not the time and place for it since Huang Long would not be able to kill him. The young man warned him that he would spend all his strength opposing his sister and would then be persecuted for obstructing the exam, so it would be wise to fight after the exam. Wan Long was indignant and asked where the guy got the idea that he could pass the awakened exam. To this Lin Yuan replied that it was no longer Huang Long's business and he should think about the consequences if he decided to attack already. After that the boy informed his sister that it was time for them to leave. He explained to her that in half a minute everyone in the hall would melt. As they parted, Ning Xian warned Huang Long that if he even touched his brother with a finger she would kill not only him but all of his disciples as well. After that they were already walking along the streets of the fortress and talking. The sister informed that she was going to return to the server abyss. The brother asked her to help stop the catastrophe, but she did not want to deal with the subsequent ones and asked him not to be afraid of self-improvement. He knew that he had great talent and had to protect his students, but ultimately he could only rely on himself, but he still asked why his sister would return to the abyss again. She pointed out that the world of the northern abyss had become much more dangerous and according to the latest data the 26th fortress had fallen. She emphasized that the fortress was no longer safe and he should become stronger and pass the awakened exam. Lin Yuan agreed and noted that there were no problems, and the girl relaxed a little. Walking forward a little, Lin Yuan asked the girl to stop. The girl froze and he touched her hair with a green leaf. Lin Yuan asked her not to sneak up on him next time if she didn't want to get hurt by the sword. After these words, the girl noted that it was time for her to go, and asking Lin Yuan to take care of himself disappeared. Ning Xian didn't tell him, but he himself knew that she asked for permission to come out of the abyss and help him. He knew that he would become so strong that he could protect her from any misfortune and wanted her to not worry about anything. After Ning Xian disappeared, a car stopped near Ling Yuan. Bai Ling got out of the car and reported that everything had been done according to his instructions. Lin Yuan smiled, emphasizing that he had not made a mistake in choosing a person, and the girl had indeed been able to cope with the difficult task in a few days. Bai Ling replied that it was her duty to share the master's concerns no matter what they were. She said that the man had signed a contract and she had sent his wife and children to the black prison. Ling Yuan smiled again, noticing what a cruel, ruthless, determined person Bai Ling was, and a person who deserved to be the head of the prison. The girl pointed to the car and said that business was urgent and the prison warden should not leave his post for long, to which Lin Yuan agreed without any problems. There was an underground auction in the black prison. A lot of different auctions gathered. One of the guys said that after he learned the news from the darknet, he had to spend $300,000 on an entrance ticket. The girl replied that she had been able to rely on human kindness to get there. Dead prisoners could be used to extract a lot of useful things, and the owners could make a fortune on the tickets. The new warden was an underground business genius, but anyone who decided to marry her would be doomed for many years. Someone noted that although the girl looked weak, her abilities were amazing. In the VIP room, Bai Ling asked Lin Yuan to look at the lots, showing him the auction catalog. He said that apart from the treasures from the prison, the girl had dirt on several large criminal organizations. The girl said that she asked the auction organizer to add several lots he wanted to the list. He praised her for a job well done, and noted that this time they took the money that the black prison could have used to purchase S-class beasts, but he wanted to get the treasure he had always dreamed of. Bai Ling emphasized that there were many potential buyers for this lot, and she could not guarantee that the organizer could leave it to them, but she promised that his servant would get rid of all criminal organizations. Lin Yuan felt that it was not worth doing so as not to attract too much attention, and besides he liked fair competition, so he decided to participate in the auction as an ordinary buyer. Soon Bai Ling declared the black prison auction open and welcomed all the guests. The guests were shown the treasures of the doomsday, and the girl noted that the black prison fulfilled all wishes. One of the spectators noticed her red knees, believing that this was not the reason for her being late, to which his friend shamed him, reminding him of the power and strength she possessed and the right to be late. The girl sitting in front of them snorted and asked for silence because they were showing the first lot. The first mystery lot was handed over to its owner as Bai Ling announced, and something covered with a tablecloth was pulled onto the stage. When the sheet was removed, underneath it was an old man bound hand and foot with his mouth closed. Many people began to be indignant who needed a lame old man. At first the guests considered him to be of no interest to anyone. The host announced that it was a death row inmate named Dr. Mark who was awaiting the electric chair. He was a serial cannibal who had committed 18 murders. Guests were outraged that such a freak could be put up for auction. But others believed that this man had never failed a single operation and was an invaluable surgeon. And someone offered $2 million if the doctor would perform heart surgery. Another offered $3 million for spinal surgery. The host cleared his throat and noted with a sly smile that the starting price for the park doctor was $50 million. All the guests were shocked by such a sum and literally lost the power of speech. Soon there were complaints that the price of $500 million was too high. The head of the Ho family, one of the top 10 families in the fortress, named Hoda, said that his son had suffered a traumatic brain injury and he was ready to get this doctor for $500 million. The CEO of the Shangshur Medical Company, Su Bing, a fiery-haired girl, said that there was an empty position for a surgeon in their clinic and offered $55 million. Soon the stakes began to rise and someone was ready to pay even $60 million for Dr. Mark. Ho Day noted that his family was determined to take Dr. Mark away because he had to save his son. He asked people to understand his situation and offered $80 million. Su Bing was indignant and said that while Huada wanted to save his son, she intended to save the lives of many people, and outbid him by offering 85 million. Hode jumped up from his seat and banged his cane on the concrete floor in anger. He doubled the bet to 170 million, warning that no one could take his son's life. Then he pointed out that this doctor was a real psycho, but he alone brought the black prison a fortune of almost 200 million. Su Bing was completely dissatisfied with her loss, while Mr. Hua was congratulated on winning the first lot of Dr. Mark. The host asked not to forget that the prisoner's mental state was extremely unstable, and he should be handled with care. After that, the auction moved on to the second, third, and fourth lots. Number 2 was the ice alien heart, which was perfect for any human. After transplantation, the person would gain the skills of a third-order ice alien. The third was a woman with hypnotic powers, a 3-year lifespan, who specialized in solving the sleep problems of wealthy people. The fourth was a hotel for the upper crust with built-in clubs, doomsday security features, and a starting price of 1 million for each home. The guests immediately began to argue and try to outbid each other and get something from the lots on offer. Lin Yuan thoughtfully said that the 300 million deposit for accepting the S-class monsters should be paid as soon as possible, and noted that Bai Ling's ability to choose slots and business acumen was a gift from heaven for him. Bai Ling thanked him for his kind words and noted that if he was pleased with the gift, he should accept it. At that moment, a spider appeared right above her, clearly unhappy with this outcome of events. Bai Ling smiled and asked the spider not to be jealous, since they all belonged to the master, and asked if she couldn't accept it. Ling Yuan asked to stop this talk and asked Bai Ling and the spider to return to their business. The first lot, as he expected, was won by the Hua family, the owner of the Flame Dragon Dojo, and Lin Yuan guessed that the family would probably have to cut their budget for the Flame Dragon. But what was more important was that the Ho family had now named many enemies because of the doctor, and the psychopathic doctor would become a source of trouble, and the Ho family would be the first to suffer. Lin Yuan was glad that the Hua family was doomed to a sad fate, and several lots were to help him personally test the silver spider.